welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello and welcome to Syosset Library's podcast,
Turn the Page.
And we are going to turn the page with our guests today. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Oh, first of all, this is Jessica.
This is Stacy.
And our guests are?
My name is Linda Springer.
And I'm Maria Duce.
Okay, Maria and Linda. Would you like to tell me a little bit about what you do?
Hi, I teach financial literacy, and I've been doing that for a long time. I meet with children, teaching them, and also adults, and do so because I had figured out years ago that a lot of people haven't learned this yet, and I'm going out to do that, to make sure that people are aware of what to do with their finances and the way that they can end up having good retirement, good protection for their life.
This is Maria. I've been a life skills teacher for many years, and when I went into the financial services industry, I really understood Linda's passion in helping people become prepared for the future. But I also work for a company called Executive Consultants of New York, and we have a foundation called ECNY Foundation, and it's our mission to help people who are unemployed and underemployed attain the skills that they need to get the job that they want and better their lives. So we actually have 8-week boot camps that we prepare them to do everything from change management to crafting an amazing elevator pitch, resume writing, LinkedIn, and interview skills. So if you happen to be one of those people that needs help with those, we are here to help, and the ECNY Foundation loves to help people in the community.
Thank you so much for telling us.
I'm just so excited to be talking about this.
This is, so would you like to talk a little bit about why?
Why I'm excited? Because I
Yes.
feel like they don't teach you this in life. Sorry, that was very aggressive. But I feel like in school, there's like a meme on Facebook where it shows like the teacher going, okay, the square root of this, and the kid's like, I just want to know how to calculate the dinner bill or how to do this. Like, why won't you tell me about taxes? And it's like, I am an adult and I am completely in the veil. I don't know half the stuff that I should at my age. So it seems. So I like learning about this, and I think it's great for not only the financial literacy to get everyone to know that and to know how to better themselves and create funds for retirement, savings, what have you. But I also think it's great that you have the life skills of how to do the elevator pitch. No one taught me how to do that. I was like, what is that? I know what it is now.
Well, yeah.
But
I think
then it's important.
I think, interview skills are extremely important in, how you present yourself. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. One of the things that we really love to do is kind of like mock interviews. It's really great because it gives you a different perspective of what the different types of interviewers are and their sensibilities. I'm a very friendly, I want to know who you are in your heart to know if I could work with you forever. And then there are other people that just want to know your technical skills and what you bring to the table. How can you make my company better? And while it's very important for you to be able to say that succinctly in an interview, it's also important for you to be authentically who you are. Because if you're inventing things about yourself, it's going to be revealed very quickly when you're on the job.
Yeah.
So you need to find a way to craft interview responses to really serve who you are as a person and your work ethic and the things that you know and the way that you do them. So we work a lot with that, and I think it's great. And my favorite question that I've ever been asked during an interview is, if you were an animal, what would you be and why? Ooh. And a lot of people can think of an animal, but the why is really tough. And I think that really defines, like, authentically who a person is if they can reason through why they would be a certain type of animal.
It's interesting because I do know, the typical question people hear or people think that they're going to hear in an interview is, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
What's your 5-year plan?
What's
your 10-year plan?
Do you see that changing the way, like, when they ask people in interviews?
I know when I've guest interviewed, and I have in their program been the interviewer for, I prefer to come up with some different questions, not the standard ones, because people are prepped for the standard ones, but it's amazing when you come up with something different, how you really delve into that person, who they are, and that can make the difference when someone goes for an interview, whether or not they're going to be hired.
So a lot of those, like, generic questions are still asked on every interview, because it's a gauge to see how you answer the questions that you know are going to be asked.
Right.
Yeah. But I think that interviewers tend to want to know more about those other weird questions.
I do.
Because it reveals more levels of who you are as a person.
Yes.
Right. Well,
That's
of course,
true.
yeah, like reasoning, like you were saying before. I know somebody was telling me that they heard there was an interview at one of the tech companies. Why are the manholes round? In the ground. That to me, I'm just like, oh well, like I'm thinking, of course, like, well, why would they be square? I mean, like, what, well, they're very heavy, and you probably need to be able to roll them away but that's like not a question I would have imagined would be asked.
I would think that it's harder to break something that's round because the weight is equally distributed through it. Like, that's
true too.
Part of it. But I like the rolling idea as well.
But I think that, like, you bring up a good point, when even just talking about this, because, we could go into an interview and we could give our answers separately, and, they could go back and they could be like, well, which reasoning, they're both good, which reasoning works better, would you say, for, depending on the position,
Right.
or even like the work life, like how would that person factor in? Is this going to be someone that's going to, like, stand out in a bad way?
But here's my question. So, like, being able to answer something off the wall like that confidently, I would imagine that really speaks volumes to an interviewer.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are looking more for how you're going to react to a question than what you have to say to the question. Mm-hmm. If you clam up and you're, like, wringing your hands and visible, like, beads of sweat on your brow, like, and it's not a question that is a serious question. It's not testing your competence in the area. It's like, what's your favorite color? And you're losing your mind. They're going to be like, okay, this person is not decisive.
Yeah.
So
it does tell a lot about it.
So yeah, it does. So sometimes it's less about the reasoning and more just about, being able to think on your feet.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Huh. So financial literacy, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Of course. But so with financial literacy, the important thing is that when we go and we meet with children, we find that they do not have a lot of the basic skills that you would expect them to have. For example, I was surprised one of the first times we went into a 7th grade class that a lot of the children didn't know how to make change. And again, because they're so used to the piece of plastic, whether it's a debit card or credit card, and then how to balance a checkbook. Again, we have a game that we play with, we've actually played it with the children, but then we've also played it with adults, and we find the same results some of the adults don't know how to balance a checkbook. So even basic skills like that are missing nowadays, and it's because of what Stacy said, is that it's just not being taught. They'll teach you trigonometry and algebra and calculus, etc., but you're not getting how to balance a checkbook or tax regulations. So
Like
certainly
stuff
not
that
there.
should be easy for an adult in my head. I'm like,
No,
Yes.
it's just you get to the point. You're like, yeah, well, guess what? You're doing it now.
well, yeah, well, I
you
have to
do
laugh
it.
because you brought up about like how to do a checkbook, and like every time I write out a check, because I don't write them that often, I'm like, am I writing this out right? Let's Google quick. Like, do I do it?
So it's a different world now.
Yeah.
But you still have to know those basic skills, whether you're doing your banking online or not.
I think you were talking about making change, and everything is really. I mean, we really do seem to be moving towards a plastic.
We have.
currency.
I
We
will
have.
100% agree with
Oh,
that.
me
I
too.
used
How-
to be.
I mean-
I used to be the friend in my friend group in high school, college, that I will always have cash on me, and now I never have cash on
And
me.
as Stacey
and I'm like,
knows,
oh.
I'm not much better. 'Cause-
Yeah. However, my
Yes.
saving grace is I'm really good at breaking down the check in
Yes, you are.
restaurants.
Yes, you are.
And I've actually seen that in at a store, where a young
wow.
person is at the register, and they do not really know how to make change because they're not getting not very often money anymore. They're getting
Yeah.
that, and then figuring it out, you could see they're having a tough time. So whether I still believe that skill needs to be taught and known.
Oh, definitely.
Yes,
Even-
of course. Well, it's really interesting. Oh no, Maria, you look like you wanted to say something. It's just thinking in general. When I was a kid, I remember going to the store with my parents, and they'd open their wallet. I mean, they did charge things, but they were more. It was more cash back then, and you'd have to wait online to the bank. I mean, it was a different world. It was, and but we'd go to a restaurant, we'd go to a store, and they would open their wallet and they would take out, and you'd see 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and the change. And it kind of quantified a little bit more for me that something was being spent.
Yes.
And my children, they just like, oh, you got lots of money. Just take your card out, and they're only 3.5. I'll be like, we'll be like by the vending machines, and they'll be like, "Mommy, get me this," and I'll be like, "Okay, well, first of all, that's not how we ask. Second of all, I don't have money on me." And they're like, "Oh, Mommy, you have lots of money. Just take your card out."
Well, I mean, now vending machines have the credit card
They
adapter.
do, but I want to teach them these life skills.
No, I think it's important to
It's
have the
very
cash because
important.
that breaks.
Yeah,
First
that's
of all,
true.
easily.
Yeah.
But second of all, it'll teach you how to calculate like the correct amount because it'll be like, oh, this like
we
water's $1.75, but you only have $1.50.
They did get cash from their great grandmother for the holidays, and we took them to Barnes and Noble to pick out some toys. And
that's
we
cute.
had to subsidize it a bit because their toys were a little bit more. But we brought cash with us, and then as we left, because they came in with their wallets and they were all excited, and then they're just like, "Oh, well, where's my money?" I'm like, "You have toys now. Your money is gone." So
Well, that's why it's so important to have those principles, because what happens to a lot of people in this country is that they don't realize what that card means, and that's why we have such a high problem with debt nowadays, because it's just too easy.
It's so easy. I'm happy to say I don't have an extreme amount of credit card debt.
Good.
But talking to some of my friends, like this was like 3 years ago, and I was with friends at a makeup convention where you could spend all your money. And I was talking to my friends, and they're like, "Well, yeah, like I have like X amount in my savings list," and I'm like, "You only have that much in your savings? Like,
Right.
why don't you have more? Like, I know I should have more." And I was like, "No, I had like 3 times the amount that they had," and I was like, "No, you guys have to do this." And they're like, "Oh, I have my credit card. I have like a couple of thousand in debt." I'm like, "Oh my god, like." I was like, we gotta go back to the basics.
We do, and that's why I could see why you're so passionate.
I do,
about
because
it,
I'm like,
I am too.
like it's important to know. Like I'd laugh because when like one of my best friends jokes that like I used to cut class in high school, and that class happened to be math pre-calc, and I did not cut it. She just like saying that 'cause she would see me in the hallways because I was going to get food because I was hungry. But I took I knew I wasn't good at math. I took a class through Nassau, didn't do well in it, and I was like, all right, I'm going to take the easiest math I can in college, and it was called Math in Action. And it was like a divorce, like how to figure that out. I was like, oh, this is like real life math. I like this. I could do this.
And see, for me, math didn't come easily. I ended up, I was very lucky. I was able to be tutored, and I did well enough on my regents. But for me, for me, the only thing that really worked was logic, which to me, like, there's no logic in logic, but it's
Guess
like,
not.
yeah, but things like that, like what Stacy was talking about. I mean, when I was in college, I took some course, and I think it was called discrete math. There was nothing like what Stacy was mentioning offered, and discrete math was so just off the walls, like nothing,
I'm thinking of like hush hush math, like shh,
don't talk about the math.
secrets in math.
And one of the things I do when I do lecture is in the beginning of a lecture, I'll ask the audience, how many of you learned financial literacy in elementary school? And I'll go up the ladder.
Yeah.
I'll have them stand. And at the end of that, there's very few people that are standing. So, it just...
And as librarians, I mean, literacy is literacy.
Important.
We're not just,
what.
we're not just obviously book literacy is important, but, we're here to disseminate information, and all types of literacy are important.
Knowledge is power. But that's why I joke, because I'm like, I'm bad at math. That's why I'm a librarian. I'm good with books.
But then it comes around to a point where you have to, use it again. I mean, I know, when you're doing something for library conferences, for instance.
Well, because you even get math stuff when you go up the corporate ladder of librarianship to be administration. You got to deal with budgets. You got to deal with that.
Yes.
And not everybody knows how to do that. Like, I don't always know how to self-budget, so that is something I like to learn about, or something like that. Or I go, oh, friends, like, hey, fun stuff.
So, like, for me, fun stuff has always been, like, tracking when you're doing things. Like, in anything in life, I track. Like, if I'm trying to eat healthy, I track it. If I'm using a credit card or a debit card, I track it. I keep my receipts. So you're saying fun stuff, like you like makeup conventions.
Yeah.
I get like a thrill out of when I swipe my debit card. I immediately write it down as if it was like a passbook savings account back in the 90s.
Yeah,
like,
that's really
for
smart.
me, that is so exciting because then I go home and I can reconcile it.
Yeah.
Right.
And probably the best lesson for me recently was I had a bank account open and somebody walked into a bank branch in Freeport. Now, I live out east in Coram. There's no way that day when I was working a 14-hour shift that I was in Freeport. $450 was gone from my bank account. I was like, how did that happen? So I called the bank. I'm trying to figure it out. Of course, that happened late on a Friday night. Now it's Saturday. You can't get anybody on the phone in the bank. They're like, well, we'll open, an investigation, but you have to be willing to prosecute if you know the person, if you see them on the camera. I'm like, I don't care. Just figure out what happened.
Yeah.
It winds up being a bank error.
Oh.
Like the teller accidentally punched in the wrong number for the account when someone came in to withdraw.
God.
So it doesn't that doesn't just happen in the game of life where if the bank has had an error in your favor or not in your favor and your money's gone. That happens for real.
Happens
like
for
even in this day and age.
And if I wasn't like as neurotic as I am at checking my accounts to make sure that, because if it was a $10 mistake, I'd be like, oh yeah, maybe I spent it and I forgot to track it. $450.
That's
a
a
nice
lot.
chunk. Like that's a bill. So I was very much on top of it, and it got rectified, and the money got returned to my account. Clearly, it took much longer than it needed to, but you really have to be on top of things in life because you can't play and have fun if you're not paying attention to the really important things.
And I have to say, my vice is food. I love food. I do.
I love food too.
And I will take.
too.
Yep. And I will take my debit card and I will swipe
cha-ching,
with the
cha-ching.
food. But it does, I think tracking would be important because when I look at just how much money I spent on food,
it hits you.
It hits
and then it's
me.
almost like a slap in the face of what? I didn't know that, which is why it's funny that you said about tracking. Because last year I was like, I'm going to start saving more for trips, whatever, paying bills, gifts for the holidays. So I use an app for that. But then I was like, you want to know what? 2019, we're going to try to figure out my tracking and spending. So I got an app that someone recommended on an article that was like highly recommended. So I was like, oh, cool. I even paid for the in-app, the extra purchases to be like, let me access everything on this. I'm not 100% great at it. I don't track after every single thing. I'll just go back to circle and look at my bank statements, so I do that more regularly than I did. But I'm like, yay, look at me, I'm becoming a real adult. I was about to say real person, but I was like a real adult.
For me, it was, like signing that mortgage, which is just
I'm getting there.
Oh my God.
I'm getting there. I'm not there yet.
So much. So before we go, I have, unless there's something else you wanted to talk about, one more question. So you mentioned LinkedIn. How important is a strong LinkedIn page?
Oh my gosh. LinkedIn is like the guide to your life in the professional world. Facebook, it's cute to see pictures of your animals and your kids. Like LinkedIn is like, this is a snapshot of who I am as a professional. So to have a strong page is incredibly important. You want it to portray who you are, whether you're looking for work or you have a great job that you love. LinkedIn is a way to connect with the people that you want in the positions that you either want to be in or that you want to collaborate with. So Linda here is amazing at LinkedIn. She's working LinkedIn every day. She's constantly, like every day, connecting with 100 different people or
That's
requesting.
awesome.
And then we have a system for reaching out to them. And it's great. And I know that you actually met Linda through
Yes,
LinkedIn.
I did.
Yes, and it is. I meet the most fabulous people through LinkedIn. And again, like what Maria was saying, it's not like Facebook. Facebook, I'll put my photos, I'll put a quote out. That's more personal.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
You really don't want to be putting your LinkedIn like that. You don't want to have them synonymous.
I don't have that necessarily. I don't see that with my friends or the people I've networked on LinkedIn, but just for me, like I don't use it that I'll update it if my responsibilities at work change or if I'm part of a new association. But I mostly like I don't know if it's just me and the people I associate with. We're very like ignorant of it, of how to properly use it, which I think is another thing that me and my friend just need to go to all these workshops. That's what I'm learning.
There are plenty of workshops available. Actually, the Microsoft store in the Walt Women's Shops in Huntington offers a lot of free training on those things. And since Microsoft owns LinkedIn, my company ECNI actually does LinkedIn trainings there.
Stacey's doing mind blown.
My mind is blown because I didn't know they do that. I don't go to the Huntington one a lot because I live closer to Roosevelt Field Mall, so I go there. But that's where I bought my computer.
So is that across the board with Microsoft? Do most Microsoft stores support that type of?
Yes, they do a lot of free training on all the Microsoft Suite products, and now that LinkedIn is part of it, they do offer training there.
I didn't know that they
great.
owned it or anything. I knew they did training of other stuff because they went through the suite of Office 365, whatever it's up to now. And I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna be like, hey, dude, show me LinkedIn.
Would you consider like a LinkedIn page almost like a pre-resume?
Yes, absolutely. You don't want to have it read like a resume, though. You want it to be a snapshot of your successes.
Okay,
so
that's good to know.
That's really exciting for LinkedIn. But the most important thing is probably the engagement on LinkedIn. If you see an article that you love, you can become a LinkedIn published author just by writing something about that. Like, who in this room wouldn't want to be an author? Nobody. Everybody wants to be an author. It's great. We're in a library.
Yeah.
But I really get very excited about that. Like if you join groups and people are talking about something in your industry, it gets extremely exciting to be able to engage with people that you otherwise would not see in person.
That's true.
And then you get yourself invited to networking events. You get to meet these people in person.
Wow.
Yes.
It really brings professional networking to another level. So LinkedIn is obviously the number one professional networking source, and it's digital, so you can do it with people all over the country, all over the world.
I like that too.
And you bring your perspective to other people that might not ever hear that because of just where you're geographically located.
So
True.
So one question about that, and I hope this isn't too much of a high pressure question. So if you were to pick the top 3 things to have on a great LinkedIn page, what would they be?
I think you need to have a great summary of who you are. So you need to identify yourself as the type of professional that you want the world to see you as. You also need to be able to highlight some of the successes that you've had when you're looking at, through your work experience and history. And then also what your interests are, because obviously people want to get to know you, but they don't need to see, pictures of your cat or your kids. They want to know who you are. Linda has something to add.
And I do, because it's a pet peeve of mine. It drives me mad. But you must put a profile picture of yourself. Because how is anybody going to see who you are? I get very annoyed when I go to somebody's LinkedIn site and there's just a little box and there's no picture there. It's really the most professional way. You have to, and if you could get a professional picture, even better.
I do see that. I mean, because in LinkedIn you're trying to show who you are. You're not trying to hide who you are.
Yes.
And also, Microsoft often will do like little touch-up makeovers for you and have like a portrait day for you to update your LinkedIn picture.
That's good.
So I know that they've partnered
Yeah.
with a couple of the cosmetic stores right in the Wall Women shops and done that. I don't know about Roosevelt Field Mall,
Stacy's heading
but you
over
might
there
want
right
to check
now.
their website
Well,
to see what
my
they
photos
have. but-
slightly outdated. My photos from 2016.
And my photo is probably from about 2012. I know.
I know. I used a photo for my engagement shoot. I was like, I look pretty in this.
We were doing something for the children's room, and I had this picture of me at the desk, and I'm like, oh, well, this is a nice picture of me as a librarian. This is what I'm going to use. But, do you have anything to add before we go?
No, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
We're going to close this chapter.
of
Turn the page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.